welcome back to A to Z Dentistry, and today we will be studying about direct retainers in detail. So let's begin. So according to GPT-8, a direct retainer is that component of partial removed dental prosthesis that is used to retain and prevent dislodgement, which consists of a class assembly or a precision attachment. Now already we know that we have lots and lots of definition in prosthodontics to mug up, so I have simplified this for you. We can just remember this as RPD. Okay, now this direct retainer is itself a component of RPD, and we can remember this definition as the mnemonic RPD. So R stands for retains, P for prevents, and dislodgement. So basically it is that component of removed partial denture which retains and prevents the dislodgement. Now dislodgement of what? The clasp assembly as well as the precision attachment. Now this clasp assembly and precision attachment we will see in detail in the upcoming classification, but for remembering the definition we can easily remember it as RPD. So coming to the classification of direct retainers, these are classified as either intracoronal or extracoronal. So these intracoronal are further classified as either precision attachments or semi-precision attachments, and the extracoronal ones are classified as retentive clasp assembly, or we can simply call it as a clasp, and the other part is the attachment. So in extracoronal part, the most important part which we should know is only the clasp assembly part. Okay, and intracoronals, these are not frequently asked, so we will be just looking it superficially, but the clasp assembly part we'll be seeing in detail in the upcoming slide. So moving on, the first one is the intracoronal direct retainer. So as the name itself indicates, it is intracoronal. Intra meaning inside and coronal means the crown of the tooth. So these direct retainers lie within the crown. Okay, so they are defined as these provide retention through the components which are placed inside or within the normal contours of the abutment tooth. As we know that our RPD is going to sit onto the tooth surface by taking attachment or support from the abutment teeth. So basically these intracoronal direct retainers, these are placed inside the normal contours of the abutment, as opposed to the extracoronal ones which are placed outside the normal contours of the abutment tooth. So in the first diagram what we are able to see is the intracoronal direct retainer. Okay, and in the second one is the extracoronal direct retainer. Now we can see that these extracoronal ones are these are placed away from the tooth, or these are located outside the normal contours of our abutment teeth. So then, as we have previously seen our flow diagram, these intracoronal retainers are further classified as either precision attachment or semi-precision attachment. Okay, so now precision means what? These are precise, meaning that they have no dimensional inaccuracy in them. These are fabricated very precisely, and these come actually prefabricated. Okay, there are some manufacturers which manufacture these kind of retainers, and these are very precise, therefore they have a superior fit and obviously a better retention. Okay, now the next type is the semi-precision type. Now these are not usually prefabricated, these are custom made. That is, we initially fabricate a wax pattern and then we cast it, and then we get our semi-precision attachment type of intracoronal retainers. Now as a doctor or as a dentist, we and the lab technician are involved, and there is formation of this wax pattern and all, so there are chances of mild discrepancies, therefore it is not as superior to as compared to our precision attachment, which provides better dimensional accuracy and better fit. Okay, but these are also used. So now we will just overview these intracoronal type of retainers. Okay, so this consists of a two component system. The first one is the matrix and the second one is the patrix. Now I have put two pictures here. Okay, so basically they have been here to describe that the matrix is basically the female component and the patrix represents the male component. Okay, so this, what happens is that this patrix gets inserted into the matrix. Okay, as boy goes to the girl, we can remember it that way, that this patrix, which is the male component, goes into the matrix, which is the female component. Okay, now this matrix is located within the abutment tooth. Okay, and this patrix will be inserted into the matrix. Yeah, so here we can see that, see, the girl is standing there. Okay, she is the female component, that is the matrix. Okay, and the blue one, that is the patrix, which is the male component. Now this female component gets into the abutment, and then the Patrick's component goes within the female component or our matrix. So coming to the advantages of these intracoronal type of retainers, basically they eliminate the visibility of the retentive component. They are more aesthetic as compared to our extracoronal retainers, which is very obvious. See, these are lying within the contours of the tooth, so they won't be as visible as compared to our extracoronal type. This will be located outside the contour of the tooth, therefore they will be more visible into the oral cavity and hence less aesthetic. The second one is elimination of visible vertical support, so the rest seat won't be visible in such type of retainers. Now the third advantage is it provides greater stimulation to the underlying tissues because of the intermittent vertical massage effect. Now we have previously seen the male and female component, okay, so basically this type of assembly provides a massaging type of effect. Okay, so therefore it provides a greater amount of stimulation to the underlying soft tissues. Coming to the disadvantages, the first one is that it requires preparation of abutment tooth and a lot of casting procedure. As we have already discussed earlier, if we are custom fabricating it, that means we have to go through all that waxing procedure. Okay, and the next part is it is complicated. It involves a complicated clinical as well as lab procedure. Okay, and the third one is the cost factor. Now as the lab procedures and the clinical procedure are a bit complex, therefore a greater amount of cost factor is involved in such type of retainer. So Prothero in 1916 said that the shape of the crown in the posterior teeth is like two cones which share a common base. Okay, as indicated in figure 2060, this was the hypothesis. Okay, so now the point where the bases of these two cones are joined is nothing but our height of contour. Okay, the point in a given tooth which has the maximum curvature, that is referred to as our height of contour. In Prothero's theory, this height of contour coincided with the common base which both the triangles shared, right? So the part which lies above this height of contour was called as suprabulge area, and the point which lies below this height of contour is known as the infrabulge area. And now based upon this, we have two types of clasp, that is either suprabulge or the infrabulge type of clasp, which we will be seeing in detail in the upcoming slides. For now, we must understand what does this height of contour and suprabulge and infrabulge area means. I hope I have made. So now moving to the main function of the clasp. Okay, so basically what happens is that there are some forces, specifically the masticatory forces, which act perpendicular to the direction of the tooth, and they tend to dislodge our RPD in the direction of the occlusion or the occlusal table of the tooth. So basically our clasp engages the undercut so that this kind of dislodgement can be prevented. For this, an undercut must be present in a given tooth. अंडरकट होगा तभी तो हमारा क्लास्प जाके वहाँ फिट इन होगा. अगर अंडरकट ही नहीं है तो क्लास्प रिटेन कैसे होगा? Therefore we need an undercut, and this undercut basically serves as a base within which our clasp will come and fit into, so that it can resist the masticatory forces and prevent the dislodgement of the denture. So there are certain ideal requirements that a clasp must fulfill, but before understanding that, we must understand what are the component or the parts of a clasp assembly. Okay, so basically these can be summarized as triple R and C. Okay, the first R stands for rest, second R is for the retentive arm, third is our reciprocal arm, and C for connector, that is the minor connector. So you can remember this as triple R C. So coming to the first part of our clasp assembly, that is the rest. Now rest is very important. See, because in the first figure, on the occlusal surface is our rest. Okay, now we can see that it is located on the occlusal surface. Okay, so basically it is the vertical support for our RPD. See, what happens is that whenever there are masticatory forces delivered along the occlusal or the long axis of the tooth, they tend to dislodge our denture, as I have mentioned it previously. So this rest acts as a vertical stop or a vertical support, and it prevents the tissueward movement of the prosthesis. Okay, now this is very essential, because without rest what will happen is that the forces will directly be transferred to the clasp. Okay, that is not what we want in our RPD. Therefore we inculcate rest, which acts as a vertical stop, and it also ensures that the retentive tip of our clasp remains in the depth of the undercut. It is very necessary that the retentive tip engages the undercut so that adequate retention can be obtained. Without rest, all the forces will be delivered along the clasp itself. Okay, and that will lead to defects in our clasp palm. It may even lead to fracture. Therefore we need a rest so that it can basically act as a vertical stop, resist some of the vertical forces and deliver them to the clasp. Though this is the main function of the rest. So the next part of our clasp assembly is the retentive arm. Now this retentive arm is divided into three parts. So now in this slide I have put two figures, right? The on the left is a human body, okay, and the second one is how actually this retentive arm looks like. Okay, so the parts of the retentive arm can be remembered as, see, we have a body. Okay, likewise the retentive arm also has a body. Now to our body we have two shoulders, right? Likewise this there are two shoulders in this clasp assembly also, that is within the retentive arm. It also has a body and two shoulders. Okay, and then it also has a retentive terminal, right? That is the most distal part of our retentive arm, that is the retentive terminal. And the most important thing here is to note that this retentive terminal is flexible, and this is the only flexible component of our retentive arm, right? Now why this must be flexible? Because we need some movement there. Okay, if it will be altogether rigid, how would it will be able to withstand the masticatory forces, right? So this retentive terminal, this is a bit flexible, and this is the only flexible component of our clasp assembly. So we can remember this easily as body, shoulders, and the most distal part, that is our retentive terminal. Now this retentive terminal in our body, we can remember either this as our like shoulder joint, or we can remember this as our fingers, that is the most distal or the terminal part. So till now we have seen about the rest and the retentive arm. Our third R is the reciprocal arm. Okay, now this reciprocal arm lies exactly opposite to our retentive arm. Okay, in this figure, see, A, B and C basically represent the components of our retentive arm, and the exact opposite arm is our reciprocal arm. So this clasp arm is placed above the height of contour on the surface of the tooth, opposing the retentive arm. Okay, it basically resists the lateral forces which are exerted by the retentive terminal. Okay, as the retentive terminal passes along the height of contour during during the removal as well as insertion of our RPD. Therefore this reciprocal arm tends to resist the lateral forces, right? For minimizing our vertical forces, we have our retentive arm, okay, which will resist our masticatory forces. But what about the lateral forces? Especially in distal extension cases, there are a lot of lateral or horizontal forces which are acting, and for that purpose we need a reciprocal arm, right, which will resist all those lateral forces. So there are three main functions of this reciprocal arm. First one is reciprocation, right? It is a reciprocal arm, therefore you can remember that as reciprocal arm. It exhibits reciprocation. Reciprocation against what? Against the action of retentive terminal itself. That whatever our retentive terminal will tend to do, it will act in the opposite direction, right? The second is stabilization against horizontal or lateral forces. Okay, this is very important. This is the main purpose of the reciprocal arm, to withstand the lateral or the horizontal forces, right? Third one is it contributes to the vertical support and also towards indirect retention. Now indirect retainer is basically inculcated in this assembly to resist the horizontal forces. So basically our reciprocal arm is also helping this indirect retainer, and also it is helping our rest, okay, to prevent the dislodgement of the prosthesis. So there are two design considerations, okay, while designing our reciprocal arm. The first one is our reciprocal arm should always be positioned above the height of contour. This is very necessary because we need this to withstand the lateral or horizontal forces. Therefore, we must place this above the height of contour as depicted in this figure, right? Now, in the adjacent figure, what it is depicting that the reciprocal arm should always contact the tooth before the retentive terminal passes into the undercut. So whenever we are delivering the RPD to the patient, we must ensure that when we are sitting our prosthesis, that the first contact, okay, of our assembly to the tooth surface must always be via our reciprocal arm, because this reciprocal arm is preventing our lateral forces, right? So we will first sit this reciprocal arm into the position, then we will place our retentive arm, right? So this is the designing consideration which we must remember. So moving on towards the last component of our clasp assembly, 3 R's we have already done. So now last is the C. Now C stands for connector, which is the minor connector. Now basically this minor connector joins the body to the remaining of the framework. Okay, now in this figure we can see that the vertical component, it is nothing but our minor connector, right, in a circumferential clasp, and the next figure is depicting our minor connector in a bar clasp. Okay, now we will be seeing clasp in detail, then you will understand what this means. For now, just remember that the minor connector joins the body to the remaining of the framework, right? So now moving towards the requirements of the clasp. Okay, so we can remember this as press. Okay, that's why I've put up this picture also. That way you might remember it easily. Okay, so requirements of clasp is very important. A separate SAQ can be asked altogether on this topic, so I'll be making a detailed video on this later, but for now we can just remember it as press. Okay, in which R is repeated 2 times, right? Okay, so here P stands for passivity, R is for retention, the second R for reciprocation, E for encirclement, and S for stability as well as support. We'll be looking into this in detail in my next video, right? So moving on towards the type of clasps, basically they can be classified into 2 broad categories. The first one is the circumferential clasp and the other one is the bar clasp. So I have put 2 pictures here. Basically the circumferential clasp is a type of clasp which encircles the tooth, okay, completely. Therefore actually it is more of 180-degree, but for you can just remember it like that, as the name itself is circumferential, it means that it will be circumscribing the tooth, it will be kind of hugging our tooth, right? So next variety is the bar clasp. Now as the name indicates, bar means what, this, like, remember it as a vertical rod or something like that. Okay, so bar means its shape resembles like a bar. Okay, it is kind of vertical. Okay, and then the rest is attached to it. So basically our circumferential clasp encircles the tooth as a whole, and bar clasp, basically it is a vertical type of clasp. Okay, we'll be studying both of these in detail in upcoming slides. Yeah, so moving on towards circumferential clasp, see, in this picture I have put up, can you see this girl hugging the tree? Exactly, this is how our circumferential clasp will engage our tooth, right? That is, it will encircle the tooth 180 degrees. Okay, now basically it is a detainer that encircles a tooth by more than 180 degree. Okay, it also includes the opposing angles which generally contact the tooth throughout the extent of the clasp. Okay, and it has at least one terminal located in an undercut. Now the main function of our clasp is to engage an undercut, only then it will provide retention, right? So this circumferential clasp encircles the tooth around 180 degree or even more than that. Okay, and basically via this it will provide us the retention. Now this circumferential clasp can be further divided as either cast circumferential clasp or a combination clasp. Now this cast circumferential clasp is also known as the Akers clasp. Okay, in this all the components of this clasp assembly are made up of a cast alloy. Therefore it is called as cast. Circumferential is a type, meaning that it will encircle the tooth and it will be made up of a cast alloy, right? The retentive terminal must originate above the height of contour and terminate below it. Again, this is very essential. See, for gaining enough retention, the positioning of this retentive arm itself is very important, and then the reciprocal arm. Okay, now in this case the retentive terminal should originate above the height of contour and terminate below it. Okay, that means it must originate at the suprabulge area and it should terminate below the infrabulge area in order to provide adequate retention. Apart from these two things, the retentive arm must also point towards the occlusal surface and never towards gingival. See, for approaching for approaching the gingival undercuts, we have our reciprocal arm. Okay, we need any retentive arm here. So basically this retentive terminal should always point towards the occlusal surface and never towards the gingival, right? The retentive tip should only terminate in the mesial or distal line angle and never in the middle of facial or lingual surfaces. Now, why it should never terminate in the middle is that what will happen, it will terminate in the middle surface, there will be greater amount of vertical forces which will be acting on our clasp assembly, and from here our prosthesis might get dislodged. Therefore we need a proper line angle in order that the prosthesis is able to withstand all those vertical forces, right? So therefore the retentive tip should terminate only and only on the mesial or the distal line angles, because see, these line angles are rounded while we are preparing our abutment, and therefore they do not allow for any stress concentration, right? That is the main objective, right? We are minimizing the stress concentration, and therefore we are saying that our retentive tip must be terminated on the mesial or distal line. So moving on towards our last point in the circumferential clasp, the clasp arm should always be kept as low as possible in order to gain mechanical advantage against any lever action on the tooth. Okay, now why we are placing it so low? See, because we need it to be closer to the center of rotation of the tooth, okay, which is located at the junction of middle and apical third, right? So it will be closer, therefore it will tend to resist all the vertical forces which are delivered along it. Therefore we are placing our clasp arm as low as possible so that we can get a mechanical advantage out of that, right? So moving on towards advantages of this circumferential clasp. See, basically it is easy to design, construct and repair. Okay, it provides excellent support, bracing and retentive qualities because it follows the principle of encirclement, that is, it is engaging our tooth 180 degrees or more. Okay, therefore it will be obviously it will possess superior retentive qualities, right? Okay, now this is the most logical choice for tooth supported removal partial dentures. Now tooth supported means our class 3 here. Okay, now it causes less food retention, right? And it can be modified in various ways according to our need, right? Now the disadvantage is that it has a greater amount of coverage, right? Therefore it may lead to decalcification or even caries because of food lodgement, right? So it basically also alters the morphology of the abutment, which might affect the normal food flow pattern, which can lead to gingival damage, right? Third is, if at all it is positioned high on the abutment, it can increase the width of our occlusal table. Now increase in the width will directly lead to more amount of occlusal forces which will be delivered onto the tooth, right? So its advantage basically becomes its disadvantage. एडवांटेज के लिए हमने बोला था कि वो टूथ को इनसर्कल करता है मोर देन 180 डिग्री. अब इतना ज़्यादा इनसर्कलमेंट रहेगा तो ऑब्वियसली ओवर टाइम वो इनामल को डीकैल्सिफाई करने लगेगा, राइट? डीकैल्सिफिकेशन के साथ साथ इतना ज़्यादा कवरेज है कि वहाँ पे फूड अक्यूमुलेशन होगा. फूड अक्यूमुलेशन की वजह से माइट बी कि वहाँ पे केरीज हो जाए, राइट? एंड इतना क्लोज कॉन्टैक्ट है तो पेडोंटल टिश्यूज़ को भी वो हैम्पर कर सकता है लॉन्ग रन में. एंड अगर हमने इसे बहुत ऊपर प्लेस कर लिया तो क्या होगा, जो ऑक्लूजल फोर्सेस रहेंगे वो बहुत ज़्यादा डिलीवर होने लगेंगे हमारे अबटमेंट पे, एंड अल्टीमेटली इट विल लीड टू problems within the abutment itself. Okay, so these are the basic disadvantages. So we are done with the Akers clasp. Now moving towards another type of circumferential clasp, which is our combination clasp. Okay, now a combination clasp is basically consist of two components, right? So the name itself indicates combination means what? It is a combination of two things, right? So according to GPT-8, it is a circumferential retainer for RPD that has a cast reciprocal arm and a wrought wire retentive clasp. Okay, the reciprocal arm will be made up of a cast alloy, right, and the retentive clasp will be made up of a wrought wire. Now why we need wrought wire? It has certain advantages. See, this is because this wrought wire can flex in all the three planes, therefore it has greater amount of flexibility than a cast arm. We have seen that cast arm is fabricated from a cast alloy, therefore it cannot provide enough what we can say flexibility as opposed to our wrought wire. Okay, now this combination clasp is specifically indicated on an abutment which is adjacent to our distal extension cases. Now these distal extension cases are our class 1 and class 2, right? These are mostly tissue supported. Therefore, in distal extension cases, when there is a mesobuccal undercut present, we prefer to give a combination clasp, so that because our wrought wire will be a bit flexible, it will tend to flex a bit whenever forces are delivered, and therefore it won't allow direct impact of forces onto the abutment, right? Because in such distal extension cases we cannot put a lot of stress on the abutment, right? Therefore we inculcate a bit of flexibility by giving a this combination clasp or a wrought wire clasp, so that it will flex a bit and resist the impact of the occlusal forces, right? In such cases we in the distal extension cases, I mean, we can never give a simple circlet or a bar clasp for that matter. See why? Because this undercut, right, if at all it is present on the mesobuccal side, what will happen is that any downward force or a masticatory force will make our retentive terminal come out completely out of the undercut, right? And we don't want that. Therefore we are giving a bit flexibility, we are inculcating a bit flexibility, so that this assembly can just flex a bit and prevent the retentive terminal from coming out of our undercut, and also it will minimize all the excessive stresses which are concentrating on the abutment. Okay, so what are the advantages? See, the first advantage is the flexibility, right? It helps to dissipate stresses on the abutment. Okay, it is obviously easy to adjust because it can flex. See, I have put up this picture, the lady is flexing. Likewise, our wrought wire clasp can flex very easily, therefore it will minimize the stresses on our abutment, right? It is more aesthetically acceptable, okay, because it can be placed on the gingival thirds, right? And it makes only a line contact with the tooth surface, therefore the chances of food accumulation, caries and periodontal problems are less, right? So disadvantage is that there are extra lab procedures, right? Therefore cost factor. Then secondly, it can be easily distorted by careless handling, because see, it is flexible, so now if we handle it carelessly, it will tend to distort. Now the third is poor resistance to horizontal stabilization. See, whenever we are talking about this clasp assembly, this is essentially, especially the retentive arm, it is made to minimize all the vertical stresses. These are not designed to withstand the lateral or the horizontal stresses. For withstanding that, we have our reciprocal arm. Okay, so basically this clasp offers a poor resistance to horizontal stabilization, right? Moving on towards our next type of clasp, which is the bar clasp. Now by definition, it is a clasp retainer whose body extends from the major connector or the denture base, passes adjacent to the soft tissues and approaches the tooth from the gingivo-occlusal surface. Now see, what we have seen is that up till now our arm was approaching from the occlusal surface, but this bar clasp basically approaches from the gingival surface, right? So that was an example of what? Suprabulge. Now this is infrabulge, meaning that our clasp arm will engage our abutment from the gingival surface as opposed to the occlusal surface, right? Therefore it is also known as gingivally approaching clasp or vertical projection or a roach, right? See, because its shape looks like a vertical rod, therefore it is vertical. it is approaching from the gingival thirds, therefore it is known as gingivally approaching class. So moving on towards indications, it is indicated in cases of smaller undercuts which are actually about 0.01 inches, which exist in the cervical thirds of our abutment, right? It cannot be given in cases of major undercuts. Why? Because see, the area of encirclement is less as compared to our circumferential clasp. So in that cases we cannot give it, right? Meaning that it cannot be given in cases where larger undercuts are present. So is basically its use is limited to small undercuts only. Second, it can be given in distal extension abutments in order to engage a distobuccal undercut. Now this distobuccal undercut is basically present adjacent to our edentulous space, right? So in cases of distal extension, definitely we can go with this type of clasp. Now third advantage indication is that most of the tooth supported partial dentures, including modification spaces where aesthetics is a concern. Now basically this circumferential clasp hampers aesthetics, okay, as discussed earlier also. So whenever there is a tooth supported RPT, that is in class 3, where aesthetics is a concern, we can easily go with this Roach type of clasp, right? So coming towards contraindications, सी कॉन्ट्राइंडिकेशंस वो होते हैं जो बेसिकली एडवांटेज होता है, उसी का अपोजिट अगर हम कुछ भी लेने जाएंगे तो वो डिसएडवांटेज या कॉन्ट्राइंडिकेशन ही रहेगा. सी पहले व्हाट वी हैव सेड दैट it can be used only in cases of smaller undercuts. So definitely contraindication क्या होगा, हम उसे कहाँ नहीं दे सकते, जहाँ पे severe tissue undercuts present है, right? In cases of major undercuts we cannot give this kind of a clasp, right? In cases of deep cervical undercut, right? In cases of severe buccal or lingual tilt of an abutment. See अगर abutment tilted है तो ये जो है इट इज़ अ वर्टिकल टाइप ऑफ अ क्लास्प, राइट? वो टिश्यू वो टूथ के कांटेक्ट ही नहीं कर पाएगा तो रिटेंशन कैसे देगा? देयरफॉर इट कैनॉट बी यूज्ड इन केसेस ऑफ अ टिल्टेड अबटमेंट. अगर वेस्टिब्यूल शैलो है, देयर इज नॉट एडिक्वेट विथ right present, so in that cases also we cannot give it, because in order for this vertical clasp to retain, there should be some amount of vestibule, okay? It should have adequate depth so that हमारा जो ये क्लास्प है ये वहाँ स्टैंड तो कर सके, टूथ से कांटेक्ट तो बना सके. अगर वेस्टिब्यूल में डेप्थ ही नहीं है तो हाउ कैन अवर क्लास्प be in its required position, right? So it cannot be given in cases of shallow vestibule, and this can never be given to engage a mesiobuccal undercut. It should always be given to engage a distobuccal undercut. Even in Kennedy's class 1 and class 2, we are giving this only to engage the distobuccal undercut. It can never engage a mesiobuccal undercut, right? Yeah, so moving on towards advantages of our bar clasp. So the first one is that it is easy to insert and it is difficult to remove, right? We need a prosthesis, okay, which is definitely easy to insert, but it should not come out, right? And the second thing is it is more aesthetic because it is gingivally approaching, right? This we have already discussed. अगर gingiva से approach होगा तो there will be less amount of metal show into the oral cavity, therefore it is aesthetically superior as compared to our circumferential clasp. सर्कमफरेंशियल क्लास्प ऑक्लूजल से जिंजावली अप्रोच होती है, राइट? सो वो ओरल कैविटी में विजिबल होगी, बट अगर हम जिंजावली अप्रोचिंग क्लास्प दे रहे हैं तो ऑब्वियसली इट इज़ मोर एस्थेटिक, राइट? द थर्ड एडवांटेज इज दैट देर आर वेराइटी ऑफ डिजाइंस इनटू विच अवर बार क्लास्प कैन बी अडेप्टेड, राइट? नाउ द डिसएडवांटेज इज दैट इट टेंड्स टू कलेक्ट फूड. Now see, whenever we look at this design, it is essentially a vertical bar, okay, right? So therefore जहाँ पे ये बार टूथ से कांटेक्ट नहीं करेगा वहाँ पे ऑब्वियसली फूड अक्यूमुलेट हो जाएगा, okay? The next one is it contributes less to the bracing and stabilization because of the greater amount of flexibility. Now see, बेसिकली अगर हम इसको डिस्टल एक्सटेंशन बेसिस में दे रहे हैं फॉर मेसोबक्कल अंडरकट, वहाँ वी नीड अ बिट ऑफ फ्लेक्सिबिलिटी. दिस वी हैव डिस्कस्ड अर्लियर ऑल्सो. थोड़ी सी फ्लेक्सिबिलिटी चाहिए सो दैट द स्ट्रेसेस ऑन अबटमेंट आर मिनिमलाइज्ड. बट the problem is that we do not require like such a kind of bracing stability or flexibility in cases of class 3 because वहाँ पे दांत है already. We have like a tooth which are located adjacent to our edentulous spaces, therefore flexibility is not a requirement in class 3, right? And the problem is that here it is not completely bracing the tooth. The contact of clasp and the tooth is limited, right? Therefore there is less bracing. Superior bracing is obviously an advantage with our circumferential clasp, that is the 180-degree encirclement which it provides, and therefore it becomes a drawback in cases of our roach type of clasp, right? So that's all for direct retainer. I hope I have made it very clear. I hope you all have understood this topic. Now there are some parts which are remaining, that is types of these clasps, that is circumferential and roach type. There are certain modifications. I will be uploading a separate video on that later, okay? And there are certain requirements of clasp design which is very important. I'll be dropping a video on that also soon, so stay tuned for more, and do not forget to like, share and subscribe. Thank you.